She says he forced himself on her. She says she begged him to stop. The amended complaint adds more, including what happened on a private plane, being locked in a bedroom while he, according to her, performed a sexual act and kept her there until the door opened. It's ugly to repeat. It's uglier if it's true. And yet, here's the twist most people missed. It didn't stop when she left. The filings say the fallout followed her home. She says there were fake emergency calls sent to her address, random service people knocking at odd hours, strange warnings to drop the case. She moved. She still didn't feel safe. Whether you believe every line or not, the message is clear. She wanted out. She says he wanted control. Now about those messages with his wife, Bianca Censori, that fans keep talking about. The lawsuit claims he texted about Bianca's own family in language too explicit for TV. The point isn't the shock value. The point is it paints a picture of how he talked to women, including women he controlled professionally or personally. If the texts are authentic and they're alleged in sworn filings, then the tone is the evidence. Of course, his camp calls all of it fiction. They say she's an opportunist. They say she was unqualified, unstable, even obsessed. They've hinted at countersuits and called her numbers ridiculous. That's the familiar script whenever a powerful man is accused. Destroy the messenger, question her motives, scream extortion, and wait for attention to shift. Sometimes it works. This time, the details keep dragging the story back. Let's hit the timeline so you know what's real. First came the 2024 lawsuit, which centered on harassment, lewd messages, and unpaid promises. Then came amendments. Some reports counted dozens of pages. Others noted a new filing this summer with fresh assault claims and a more complete story. That's important. People tune out when allegations are vague. They lean in when a document lands with times, places, and a pattern that looks like the person they've seen in public. The pattern is the story. Think about it. A superstar with a known taste for shock, a history of offensive outbursts, and a decade of scorched earth feuds. Now imagine that same person as your boss, with your salary tied to his moods. Even if 10% of this is accurate, it's a nightmare. If most of it is true, it's a scandal that dwarfs the music. How are fans reacting? It's split. Some refuse to believe anything about him anymore. They call every allegation a smear. Others say they finally see a through line. The public meltdowns, the disrespect, the lack of consequences. They're connecting that behavior to what might have been happening behind the scenes. And they're asking the obvious question, how many people looked the other way because the brand was too big to fail? Let's talk about those assault texts. Tonight isn't about one shocking message. It's about how the messages fit into the larger harassment story. They allegedly came at all hours, swerved from flattery to filth, and mixed business with sexual pressure. That last part matters. In a normal job, your boss sending you graphic content would trigger HR in 5 minutes. In celebrity empires, HR is often a cousin, a fixer, or nobody at all. She also says he used proximity as power. Lock the door, corner her on the plane, show up where she lived after firing her. Each piece on its own sounds like a messy rumor. Together, it reads like a strategy. Keep her off balance, keep her close, keep her quiet. Whether a judge agrees or not, that's the picture she's painting. And it's why the story is sticking. Here's where the legal fight gets interesting. Her team wants a jury. That means discovery. If this survives motions to dismiss, lawyers get to ask for devices, messages, calendars, travel manifests, the kind of receipts that make or break a case. If the texts and call logs line up with her timeline, his denials get weaker. If they don't, she has a problem. That's why both sides are shouting in the press right now. They're fighting over public opinion before a judge ever sets a date. What about the connection to other scandals? You've seen the Diddy name float through this. In one version of events, a studio session hosted by a different mogul is where she says she was drugged, then assaulted by her boss. She's not suing that other mogul in this case. But it ties the story to a whole ecosystem. Parties, power, and people who think NDAs can bury anything. Viewers are asking the right question. If this is what insiders say out loud, what's hiding in the group chats? Let's pause on the human angle. She says she left the industry she loved to get safe. She moved states. She says she deals with anxiety, sleep problems, fear. Maybe you believe all of it, maybe you don't. But you can hear the cost in the details. Apartment changes, new phone numbers, new routines, looking over your shoulder. That's not a headline. That's a life detour. Why would she risk going public? Critics say money, her side says accountability. The truth could be both. Lawsuits seek damages. They also put a story on record. Once those documents exist, other people who worked around the same machine might feel brave enough to talk. That's how these cases turn into movements. One person breaks the silence, and a line forms behind her. And what's his play now? He'll deny everything. He'll point to contradictions between the 2024 filing and the 2025 filing, saying if the story changed, it must be false. That's classic defense strategy. But inconsistencies don't automatically mean lies. They can also mean someone finally told the full story after deciding they were done protecting a brand. Jurors are people. They know how fear works. Here's the mid-video twist. There's a stalking element in her amended complaint that most headlines buried. Not just messages and pressure, but the aftermath. Alleged false emergency calls to her home after she sued, meant to terrify her into silence. If any of that can be tied back to him, even loosely, it's devastating. Because it doesn't read like messy romance. It reads like retaliation. Let's talk PR damage. Advertisers ran from him after previous controversies. Labels cut ties, fashion partners backed away. He rebuilt some of that attention with shock tactics and a loyal base online. But corporate doors don't fly open for men attached to words like battery, assault, and trafficking. Executives imagine depositions and subpoenas. They imagine their own shareholders asking why they banked on a walking courtroom exhibit. Fans also hear the word trafficking and think of federal cases. That's not what's here. At least not yet. In civil suits, lawyers sometimes use that word to describe coercive patterns that fit the statute. It still sounds explosive. The internet hears it and assumes jail. The truth is messier. This is a civil case unless prosecutors jump in. But even a civil case can pull records, flight logs, NDA templates, and, yes, text threads that have never seen daylight. What do these texts actually prove? Alone, a crude message proves someone typed it. In context, a stream of messages proves access, tone, and intent. If your boss sends you graphic content for months and you keep working, a defense lawyer says you consented to the vibe. If your boss also corners you in physical spaces and your messages show you begging off, a jury might see harassment, not consent. That's why this assault texts angle matters. It's not just shock, it's the connective tissue. The power dynamics are obvious. He's rich, famous, and volatile. She's an employee on call, hoping the job leads somewhere. When he calls at 2 a.m., is that a flex or an emergency? When he texts explicit comments, is that a joke or a test? When he says, "Come to my room," is that a meeting or a trap? If you think the answers are simple, you've never worked under someone who controls your rent, your car, and your reputation with a single phone call. Let's zoom out. Hollywood and the music business promise golden futures to people who can survive chaos. They teach you to accept behavior you'd never allow in a normal office. They turn the red flags into genius quirks. That's why lawsuits like this matter. They break the myth that talent excuses everything. If a billion-dollar brand can be forced to answer discovery, maybe interns at smaller companies feel safer saying no. So, where does this go next? Watch for motions from his side to strike the most damaging parts. Watch for her side to request devices, travel itineraries, and security logs. If we see a hearing date scheduled for discovery disputes, that's your sign this isn't going away. If it quietly settles, that's another kind of answer. Money traded for silence, which is what she says the machine wanted all along. There's one more angle, and it's personal. People want to know if Bianca stands by him. The filings mention her, the texts mention her family, and fans are reading between the lines. But remember, spouses in these circles live inside the same PR fog. She may not be free to say what she thinks, or she may be all in. Either way, this case isn't about her. It's about whether a boss used power to turn a workplace into a trap. In the end, the hero-villain framing writes itself. The hero is the person who risks losing everything to say, "This happened." The villain is whoever thinks fame equals permission. If the filings are accurate, he aimed to bury her with pressure, doubt, and fear. Instead, he put a spotlight on himself that even his loudest album rollout couldn't buy. So, here's the closer. And it's simple. These alleged texts and timelines don't just expose bad behavior. They expose a system that protected it. If he beats the case on a technicality, that won't change what the public already decided. The trust is gone, the partners are gone. The excuses are old, and the receipts, once dropped, never go back in the bag. He set out to destroy her credibility. If this keeps moving forward, he may have destroyed his own.